Now back to news from Edmonton. Welcome to Canada News Summaries. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jane.
And, we've got a real political chess match brewing here in Alberta.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Naheed Nenshi, the former mayor of Calgary?
Of course.
Well, he's jumping back into the political arena, this time aiming for a seat in the provincial legislature.
Yeah, that's right. He's seeking the Alberta NDP nomination for Edmonton-Strathcona. And that's the seat vacated by Rachel Notley just last month when she stepped down as leader of the NDP.
Talk about big shoes to fill.
Huge.
So he's not just dipping his toes into provincial politics. He's diving headfirst into a pretty high-profile race. And he's already made it clear he's looking for a head-to-head with Premier Danielle Smith. What's the strategy there, do you think?
Well, it's a bold move for sure. Announcing that kind of intention right off the bat, it suggests he's not afraid of a fight and wants to position himself as the clear alternative to the current government. It's a way to generate buzz and grab the attention of voters who might be looking for a change.
Yeah, for sure. It's also interesting that he's chosen Edmonton-Strathcona specifically. I mean, he's deeply connected to Calgary, having been mayor there for 12 years. What do you make of this move eastward?
Well, there are a few layers to that. First, Edmonton-Strathcona has become a bit of an NDP stronghold in recent years, both Rachel Notley and Raj Panu. Previous NDP leaders held this seat, so there's a symbolic element to it, a sense of carrying on a legacy. And practically speaking, it's a riding where the NDP already has a solid base of support.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But Nenshi is still very much associated with Calgary. Could that actually be a disadvantage in a riding like Edmonton-Strathcona?
It's definitely something to consider. Some voters might see him as an outsider, someone who's not truly connected to the community. On the other hand, his experience running a large city like Calgary could be seen as an asset. It shows he knows how to manage complex issues and work with diverse stakeholders.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And let's not forget, Nenshi was known for his progressive stance as mayor of Calgary, which isn't typically a city known for its left-leaning politics. Could that play well in Edmonton-Strathcona, a riding with a more progressive reputation?
It's certainly possible. Nenshi built a reputation for being a pragmatic, solutions-oriented leader, which could appeal to voters across the political spectrum. And his focus on issues like social justice and environmental sustainability could resonate with the Edmonton-Strathcona electorate.
Okay, so let's break this down for our listeners who might not be totally up on Canadian politics. We're talking about provincial politics here, right? What exactly does that entail?
That's a great point. When we talk about provincial politics, we're talking about the level of government that deals with things within a specific province. This includes things like healthcare, education, transportation, and natural resources. In Canada, each province has its own legislature, which is kind of like a mini parliament where elected representatives called MLAs debate and pass laws.
So if Nenshi wins this by-election, he'll be an MLA, responsible for representing the people of Edmonton-Strathcona at the provincial level. But how does that differ from his role as mayor?
As mayor, he was focused on the city of Calgary, dealing with municipal issues like local services, infrastructure, and bylaws. But as an MLA, he'll be part of a much larger system, working with other elected officials to create and implement policies that impact all of Alberta. It's a whole different ballgame.
Right, a much bigger stage. And to make things even more interesting, we don't even know when this by-election will happen. The Premier has until the end of June to call it.
Exactly. And you can bet both the NDP and the UCP will be using that time to strategize, rally their supporters, and try to frame the narrative in their favor. This by-election is shaping up to be a pretty significant event in Alberta politics.
So what are you watching for between now and then? What are the key things that will tell us how this race might unfold?
Well, I'll be keeping an eye on how both Nenshi and the UCP candidate choose to position themselves. Will Nenshi lean heavily on his Calgary experience? Or will he focus on connecting with Edmonton voters on their own terms? And how will the UCP try to counter his appeal? Will they paint him as an outsider, or will they try to focus on their own record in government?
And how do you think Nenshi's entry into the race might impact the Alberta NDP as a whole? They're the official opposition right now, but could this give them a boost?
It could certainly energize the NDP base and attract new supporters who might be drawn to Nenshi's name recognition and progressive track record. But it's also a gamble. If he loses, it could be a setback for the party's momentum heading into the next general election.
So much intrigue already. It's going to be fascinating to see how all of this plays out. And for our listeners, we want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Nenshi can pull off a win in Edmonton-Strathcona? What are your predictions for the by-election and the impact it might have on Alberta politics? Share your thoughts with us on social media. And don't forget to follow, like, and share this podcast with others.
It's funny how one political move can suddenly make everyone an armchair analyst. I've been hearing so many opinions about whether Nenshi can connect with voters in Edmonton.
Yeah, it's a big question mark. He spent his political career in Calgary, a city with its own distinct culture and priorities. Can he bridge that gap and convince Edmonton voters that he understands their needs and concerns?
Right, and what about his progressive background? Will that be an advantage or a disadvantage in this race?
It really depends on how he plays it. Edmonton-Strathcona has a reputation for being more left-leaning than other parts of the province, so his progressive credentials could resonate with voters there. But he'll need to find a way to balance that with a message that appeals to a broader audience, right? Especially since the UCP will likely try to paint him as too radical for Alberta.
Exactly. They'll probably try to frame this by-election as a choice between Nenshi's big city ideas and their own focus on economic growth and traditional values. It'll be interesting to see how he counters that narrative.
Yeah, and speaking of the UCP, this by-election is a chance for them to test their own messaging and see how well it resonates with voters. It's almost like a mini referendum on their performance so far.
Absolutely. They'll be looking to hold on to the seat and maintain their momentum heading into the next general election. And you can bet they'll be pulling out all the stops to make that happen.
So let's say Nenshi does manage to win. What would that mean for the Alberta NDP? Would it be a game changer for them?
It would definitely be a significant victory. It would show that they can attract high-profile candidates, win in key ridings, and build momentum against the UCP. But it wouldn't be a guarantee of success in the next general election.
Right, it's just one seat after all. But still, a win like that could shift the political landscape, couldn't it?
It could indeed. It could energize the NDP base, attract new donors and volunteers, and give them a stronger voice in the legislature. It could also put pressure on the UCP and force them to reassess their strategies.
Okay, so potentially a lot of ripple effects. And what about for Nenshi himself? What kind of impact would this move have on his political career? Win or lose?
If he wins, it would solidify his status as a political force in Alberta. It would show that he can win elections outside of Calgary and potentially set him up for a run at the NDP leadership down the road. But if he loses, it could damage his reputation and raise questions about his viability as a provincial politician.
So there's a lot at stake for everyone involved. It's not just about who wins this one seat. It's about the broader implications for Alberta politics as a whole.
And that's what makes this by-election so fascinating to watch. It's a microcosm of the larger political battles playing out across the province, and a preview of what we might expect in the next general election.
Yeah, it's like a sneak peek into the future of Alberta politics. It's also a reminder that elections matter, even those that seem small or localized. They can have a ripple effect that shapes the political landscape for years to come.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important for voters to engage in the process, to learn about the candidates, and to make their voices heard when the time comes.
Speaking of voters, let's talk a bit about the people of Edmonton-Strathcona. What are the key issues that might be top of mind for them in this by-election?
Well, like many communities across Alberta, they're likely concerned about the economy, jobs, and the cost of living. Healthcare is also a big issue, as is education and the environment. And given the diverse makeup of the riding, they'll be looking for a representative who understands and can advocate for their specific needs.
So a lot of the same concerns we see across the country. It's a riding with a rich history and a strong sense of community. It'll be interesting to see how the candidates try to connect with those local concerns and position themselves as the best advocate for the people of Edmonton-Strathcona.
And it'll be up to the voters to decide who they believe in and who they trust to represent them at the provincial level. It's a responsibility they shouldn't take lightly.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the political maneuvering and the strategic calculations, but at the end of the day, it's about the people and the communities that these decisions affect.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that their voices are heard and that their needs are addressed by those in power.
And that's why we encourage our listeners to stay engaged, to follow this race closely, and to make sure they're informed when the time comes to cast their vote. This by-election might seem like a small event, but it has the potential to have a big impact on the future of Alberta.
And it's a reminder that every vote counts, and that even in a seemingly predictable political landscape, surprises can happen. So stay tuned, because things are about to get very interesting in Edmonton-Strathcona.
We've talked a lot about the political implications of this whole Nenshi situation, but keep thinking about something you said earlier about Edmonton-Strathcona having a real sense of community.
Yeah, it's true. It's a riding with a lot of history, a diverse population, and a real sense of pride.
So how do you think they're reacting to this news? I mean, here comes this big-name politician from Calgary trying to win a seat in their community. Do you think they'll embrace him, Or will there be some skepticism?
I think there's bound to be a mix of reactions. Some people will be excited about having someone with Nenshi's experience and profile representing them. Others might be wary of an outsider coming in and trying to make changes. It'll be up to Nenshi to prove that he understands their concerns and has their best interests at heart.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good reminder that politics isn't just about abstract ideas and party platforms. It's about real people's lives.
Exactly. And those people in Edmonton-Strathcona are going to want to know what Nenshi's vision is for their community. What specific issues is he going to champion? How is he going to make their lives better? These are the questions that will ultimately determine whether he succeeds or fails.
Right, and I imagine the UCP candidate will be hammering home that local connection, trying to paint Nenshi as out of touch with the needs of Edmonton-Strathcona.
Oh, absolutely. They'll be emphasizing their own roots in the community and their understanding of local issues. It'll be a classic insider versus outsider dynamic.
And it's fascinating how this one by-election has become a microcosm of the larger political trends we're seeing across Canada. You've got the progressive versus conservative clash, the urban versus rural divide, and the whole question of who gets to represent whom.
It's like all of these fault lines are converging in this one riding, and the outcome could have ripple effects that extend far beyond Edmonton-Strathcona.
It really puts it all into perspective. It's a reminder that every election matters and every vote counts. The decisions made in this by-election could shape the political landscape of Alberta for years to come.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so crucial for voters to be informed, to engage in the debate, and to make their voices heard when the time comes.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the political maneuvering, the potential impact on both the NDP and the UCP, and what this all means for the people of Edmonton-Strathcona. But most importantly, we've highlighted why this by-election is worth paying attention to.
Definitely. It's a race with high-stakes, compelling characters and no shortage of intrigue. And it's a reminder that Canadian politics can be just as unpredictable and captivating as anything you'll find on TV.
So for our listeners, we want to leave you with this thought. What do you think this by-election says about the state of Alberta politics today? Is it a sign of change on the horizon or a reinforcement of the status quo? We encourage you to keep asking questions, to stay engaged, and to make sure your voice is heard when the time comes. And don't forget to follow, like, and share this podcast with others. Thanks for listening.